We have the potential in this country to create a natural gas surplus of over 60 BCF a day. And to put that in perspective, that amount of energy is equivalent to adding 10 million barrels a day of clean energy to the world stage. It's going to be a decarbonizing force. That is like adding another Saudi Arabia worth of energy to the world stage.
A good tale about why you should have your children do work, even when you have money in the bank.
Carbon capture could be another game-changing technology. I mean, we say carbon capture could be as impactful as hydraulic fracturing. Now, that is a very bold statement because hydraulic fracturing changed the world and made America the energy superpower.
Hello and welcome to The Energy Gang, a discussion show from Wood Mackenzie about the fast-changing world of energy. I'm Ed Crooks. And on this show, we're going to be talking about gas. We're going to be talking about American gas in particular. We're going to be talking about why the industry is booming at the moment and what the implications are for the United States and for the world. To do that, I'm joined by Amy Myers-Jaffe again. Amy is the director of the Global Energy, Climate and Sustainability Lab at New York University. Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm great, Ed. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Very good. Just back from holiday, which was very nice, but good to be back talking to you again also. And it's also a pleasure to welcome back to the show Toby Rice. Toby is the chief executive of the EQT Corporation, which is one of the largest natural gas producers in the United States. Hi, Toby. Welcome back.
Hey, Ed. How you doing?
Very good. Thanks. Great to see you again. So you have been on the show before, a few years back in our special Thanksgiving episode. Just for the benefit, though, of listeners who may not have heard that episode or may not remember your appearance then, it would be good to talk a little bit about your background. Something we always like to do with people on the show is talk to them about how they got into energy, and also talk a little bit about EQT. Perhaps why don't we start with that, just to kind of set the table so people understand what EQT is and what you do. So perhaps could you tell us a little bit about the company?
So EQT is America's natural gas champion. Every day we produce over 1 million barrels a day worth of energy, but it's over 95% of that energy is in dry natural gas. Every day our 1,600 employees and our 30,000 contractors are out waking up thinking about, one thing. How can we make our energy even better? That means we're focusing on ways to make our energy cheaper, more reliable, and cleaner. And with this current market environment that we're in right now, whether you're talking about AI or you're talking about energy security for the world, we're also thinking about another attribute, and that is how can we make our energy bigger? And so it's a really exciting time to be in natural gas, and as America's natural gas champion, EQT is going to play a leading role in building the energy systems of the future.
Toby, just for the listeners who don't know EQT, you're one of the best performing companies in the United States when it comes to your net zero commitments. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes. So we are actually, as I mentioned, we think about how we can make our energy cheaper, more reliable, and cleaner. And on the clean aspects of energy, EQT has been on a journey that's demonstrated a lot of progress, but really the results speak for themselves. EQT, we're proud to say that we are the first energy business of scale to achieve net zero on a scope 1 and 2 basis. This has been incredibly important for us to be able to do this, to address one of the biggest environmental concerns that the public has about our operations, specifically around methane emissions. One of the reasons why this is so important for us to address, Amy, is because we've got to center the conversation on the things that are actually going to move the needle right now. People are focusing on the emissions associated with making our products, and we want to focus people on the emission reduction benefits when people use our product. And just to give you an example with EQT, our carbon footprint is around 800,000 tons per year. That's what it takes for us to run our entire operations, drill the wells, complete them, have our well tenders take care of them every day. And that includes our methane emissions. And some people are saying that we need to shut down natural gas development because of this carbon footprint. Well, understand this. That carbon footprint is going to create an amount of product when put on the world stage to replace higher forms of carbon intensive energy like coal. That amount of product we're going to put on the world stage is going to have a carbon CO2 reduction impact of over 150 million tons. So an 800,000 ton cost for 150 million ton benefit. This is one of the greatest opportunities if you care about lowering CO2 emissions. And so for us to focus the conversation on the benefits of using natural gas, being net zero on our operations platform, which we're leveraging nature-based carbon offsets, in addition to the massive operational efficiencies we've put in place over the past few years, is a way for us to focus the conversation on what really matters, which is the decarbonizing impacts of natural gas.
So I have to say, I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about this. Obviously, Amy asked about it, but it's interesting. We're already getting into that in this conversation. And I was very struck looking at your corporate website, quite a lot of references to net zero emissions, because it feels like that whole subject is very much out of favor in the energy industry at large around the world. It's obviously very much out of favor in terms of US federal government policy right now. So what is your thinking there when you still talk about these issues, as you say, are still focused on them as part of your corporate strategy? What is the benefit to you in pursuing this kind of approach when, as I say, feels like a lot of other people around the world are moving away from it?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand, our commitment to environmental excellence is unwavering. Doesn't matter who's in charge in the White House. And stepping back, our strategy, we think to be successful in energy is going to be graded based on the affordability, the reliability, and the clean aspects of the energy we produce. So regardless of who's in control, we're going to focus on those three elements. And our commitment to environmental excellence is going to continue and persist. And, what's really exciting about what we've done at EQT is not just, the paths that we've taken have left breadcrumbs for others in industry to lower their methane emissions. We're really excited to see, industry has been able to show that they've lowered methane emissions by over almost 50% in upstream. That you can look at the American Petroleum Institution. The Environmental Partnership summarizes the progress of industry. And then also some of the things we're doing from a transparency perspective are really going to be benefiting the entire industry. So, on that note, doing great work on the methane emissions front is something that we can put out there, but we need to also bring an equal amount of transparency to that. And so to that point, we've launched an initiative in Appalachia called the Appalachian Methane Initiative, and we are doing aerial monitoring for methane emissions. Now, we are monitoring an area over almost 16 million acres. And for perspective, that's an area equivalent to the size of France. That gives us better insight into what's happening on our operations, but that's also giving us insight to all operators, and not only just our industry, but other industries as well. And we're able to call out these methane emission incidents and have them get corrected. So, this is where the industry is going. Ultimately, I see people moving from aerial monitoring from, planes and drones, ultimately getting to satellite, which will have big coverage across the globe. That's the direction. And hopefully with that level of transparency paired with the operational performance that this industry is putting out, will address the public's concern over methane emissions and understand that natural gas is actually one of the biggest decarbonizing tools we have on this planet, because the biggest source of emissions on this planet is using coal to generate power, and natural gas is the natural replacement. It's what we've done in the U.S. It's why the U.S. is the world's leading country on lowering emissions, is by doing one simple thing: replacing coal with natural gas. So we're going to address methane emissions and focus on the big prize and seeing how natural gas can be a decarbonizing impact. But, the one thing I think that this administration is really putting a focus on is the other elements, the other attributes of energy. Energy cannot just be clean. It needs to be affordable and reliable. And those two elements create, energy security, which is a huge focus right now. And I totally agree with the administration. We need to be focusing our efforts on making energy affordable and reliable for people, because it's become quite an issue here in the United States and around the world.
Yeah, and I want to get on to talk about those issues around energy security in just a moment. Just before we do, again, the thing we're always interested in doing with people on the show is hearing about their personal backgrounds, how they got interested in energy, the career paths that led them to the roles they now hold. So your story, I know, is that you founded Rice Energy with your brothers and father when you were very young. I think only 25 started that company. But what came before that? What really first got you interested in energy and made you want to pursue a career in this field?
Yeah, and I get that question a lot because I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and people say, how the heck did you get into oil and gas? Because, in the U.S., 38 states in the United States produce oil and gas. Massachusetts is not one of them. So I didn't know anything about oil and gas aside from the price we paid at the pump growing up. But it was around 24 years old. I had a chemistry degree and I didn't want to do chemistry. I was sweeping chimneys in the South Shore of Massachusetts. Had an incident on the roof one day and realized I got to actually figure out what I'm really going to do in this world. And I went to my father and I said, hey, Dad, can you be a dad and give me some advice? And I remember he put his paper down. He says, what about the oil and gas industry? I said, well, what are you talking about? Like Saudi Arabia? He says, no, we do it in the United States. And after a 10-minute conversation to me, it was pretty clear. It was big risk. It was big competition. And it was something that was really important to me back then. It sounded like a modern day treasure hunt. So it was really exciting.
And sorry, just to interrupt, because this is in the early days of shale, right? So this is sort of what, 2004, 5? When is this?
So 2005. So just as a background for the country, America was energy dependent. This was a big concern. People were calling this the greatest wealth transfer in history. And so shale was an idea. It was being tested, but it wasn't fully blossoming. But this shift, the transition in the energy industry was beginning. People need to understand we've gone through a transition. That transition was going from conventional reservoirs, can you find it, easy to get out of the ground, to unconventional reservoirs. We know it's there, but it's hard to get it out. And so I moved to Texas to get my first job in this industry was a floor hand on a workover rig making $9 an hour. Super deep appreciation for the hard work that the men and women of this industry do every day to make energy happen. And then I went to Texas A&M to figure out what hydraulic fracturing and unconventional reservoirs were, developed some technology, dropped out of Texas A&M and started my first consulting business on the premise that the right technology is the key to creating differentiated results. We were really flexing on hydraulic fracturing technology, and we were showing that we were able to increase productivity of wells from operators just by putting, 20, 30, sometimes 50% by putting the right technology in their area. And I got a phone call one day from my father, and he said, Tobe, I'm 25 years old at this point. I've been in the oil and gas industry for about a year. He says, Tobe, what are you going to do with this edge that you seem to have developed with this hydraulic fracturing technology? I said, well, Dad, I'm going to keep hustling for this day rate as a company, as a consultant. What else can I do? And this is my opportunity that is unique to me. And this is why we work so hard every day, is because we recognize this is so special. He said to me, he says, well, Tobe, I've always wanted to have an oil and gas company, but I've been waiting for the edge to be able to play this. And it seems like you've created that edge with this technology. I want to start an oil and gas company with you. I've got $10 million. And I was obviously shocked. And he says, can you believe I want to start an oil and gas company with you? I said, no, Dad, I can't believe you have $10 million. I was over there sweeping chimneys for the last year. Like, you can throw me a bone.
A good tale about why you should have your children do work, even when you have money in the bank.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to be doing a podcast here with Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. And one of the things we can talk about is the dirty jobs that I've been doing leading up to this point. Well, anyways, so that was the unique opportunity that we had. And we started Rice Energy in 2007. Really was a story of just evolution. From three brothers in an apartment in Pittsburgh, we grew that business over 10 years to a top 10 producer of natural gas in the country. And in 2017, we took the last phase of our evolution by combining Rice Energy with EQT. And that deal is what created America's largest natural gas producer. And at 35 years old, America had found its energy independence, which is a fantastic thing. And I was thinking about what's next in life for me. Fortunately, the money was handled and I wanted to focus my time on making an impact in this world. And so I spent a year looking and researching what's the best way to do this. And my path forward became very clear once I saw two charts. And the charts were the impact of energy usage on the quality of life and the length of life. Simply put, the more energy people use, the higher the quality of life, the longer they live. So if you want to make an impact on this world, find a way to bring more energy into it. And that's where I said, hey, I can help do these things. So I actually ran to the CEO of EQT and asked him and said, hey, can I have my job? Can I have a job here and help you bring energy abundance into this world? And he said, no. So I went to the shareholders and they said yes. And after a lengthy proxy contest, we took control of EQT in July of 2019. I became the CEO. And every day since then, we've been focusing on realizing the full potential of EQT, making our energy cheaper, more reliable, cleaner, and ultimately bringing energy abundance into this world. And that's our higher purpose. While we are driven by profits, because that is the ultimate sign of our sustainability, and our energy systems need to be sustainable, we're also driven by a higher purpose. And our higher purpose is bring more energy into this world, make it affordable, make it reliable, make it cleaner, and we're going to have a tremendous impact in this world. And when you step back and you look at what we're doing at EQT as the CEO, every day we're working to bring energy abundance to the developed world. And then we also started a nonprofit as a founder of Energy Corps. Our focus is bringing energy abundance to emerging markets around the world. Now, the vision hopefully is that someday these worlds can come together and the energy access we provide to emerging markets, those markets will grow and have become developed, and obviously the lifestyles that we'll be able to afford to the billions will be a really big impact on the world. And that's what we're working towards every day.
So, Toby, it's really an interesting time because just to double down on the two things you mentioned, because you've recently signed supply agreements where you're going to feed into U.S. LNG, going to help countries that are disrupted. But then on the other hand, cooking fuel, LPG, which no one ever talks about, liquefied petroleum gas, has really disrupted food security in places like India and other places where it's important to have clean cooking fuel. So, when you think about what you had in your head and how you've pivoted to being like a major player in this space, tell us a little bit more. I mean, how do you see it in the sort of Strait of Hormuz context?
Yeah, so I think everything that you're seeing right now is a reason for us to bring energy abundance into this world. And that's really the bigger picture is we need to bring energy abundance into this world because that's what's going to make, the biggest impact. And people say, people hear the administration talking about energy dominance, but really for us, it's about energy abundance. And there are 5 benefits of energy abundance. And this is why people should care about this. Energy abundance means, number one, that we are able to protect America's energy advantage. That means our families, our communities, and our businesses have access to affordable, reliable energy. That right now, Americans' energy bills are up over 40%. We need a lot of work to get back to protecting America's energy advantage. Number 2, energy abundance means that we're able to extend our technological leadership. That means things like the West and our allies are going to be able to win the AI race and the tremendous amount of energy it's going to take. Some people are saying that that's going to be a 20% increase in the natural gas demand for the power generation build out. Now, keep in mind, only 40% of that is going to be for data centers, but it's an incredibly energy intensive business. Number 3, third benefit of energy abundance is providing energy security to our allies. And Amy, as you mentioned, the issue that's going on in the Middle East right now just shows the incredibly important role that America is playing in providing energy security to our allies. And what the world should be understanding right now is that global energy security is your country's energy security. Every country is impacted by these geopolitical events that are being felt around the world. But one thing that I will say, in our U.S. LNG is the way America is providing energy security to our allies. And one thing that we can get into, which is really important, is, thanks to the shale revolution, thanks to our energy independence, we've seen natural gas prices increase. They're over $20 today in Europe, okay? In the United States, they're less than $3, okay? What does that tell you? That's the value of our energy independence. We've been able to safeguard Americans from these geopolitical shocks. And we need to do more on the LNG front to provide energy security for the world, which will create a more peaceful, prosperous planet. The other part of energy security that's really important for people to understand, there are bad actors in this world that are translating their energy sales into terror, tyranny, and bombs. And America providing energy security to the world, energy abundance is going to allow us to replace the influence of these petro dictators with the influence and energy of America. And that's going to lead to a more peaceful, prosperous planet. The last two benefits of abundance, I think, are really what gets us out of bed in the morning. The fourth benefit of energy abundance is it's going to allow us to eliminate poverty and empower humanity. This is where we're talking about the billions that live in a world without a sufficient access to energy. To lift the, call it 7 billion that are living in an energy deficient lifestyle, to bring them up, we are going to need to triple the amount of energy that's produced and consumed in this world. That's the energy abundance target. We need to triple the amount of energy that's produced and consumed in this world. And if we do that, because we know that energy translates to wealth, the amount of wealth that we're going to create in this world we're going to be able to increase global GDP 5 times over. In addition to the human flourishing benefit of lifting billions out of poverty. So whether you care about energy, you care about business, or you care about making the world a better place, you should care about energy abundance. And the last point that we cannot forget is that energy abundance is going to allow us to create a cleaner planet and a cleaner environment. And we know that wealthy countries do a better job taking care of their environment. And that is something that we keep in mind. Those are the 5 benefits of abundance, and that's what we're driving to every day. And this can all be summed up real simply. We need to make the energy systems in this world bigger.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And I do entirely agree with you on that question of energy abundance and the benefits that increased energy supply brings to everybody. And I do think it's something that, as Amy was saying, when you think about the crisis in the Gulf, what's happened with disruption to exports from the Strait of Hormuz, that's really brought that into focus, I think, because when you have energy supply being cut back as essentially as it has been because of oil and gas tankers not being able to pass through the strait, there are real consequences to that in terms of deterioration of people's quality of life, in terms of people not being able to get to work, particularly in much of Asia, in terms of people not being able to get cooking fuel, as you've said. In South Asia has been a particular problem there. And so, as I say, all of these things I think have been made very clear to us over the past few months. I wonder, Toby, what you think, though, about the sort of the long-term implications might be then? Because it seems to me there's a couple of things going on. There is both that sort of realization of how important energy is to everybody and how important fossil fuels are to the lives we all lead. And then that implies that, for instance, as you say, people are going to be more interested in buying increased exports of LNG from the US. But on the other hand, it's also, I think, sort of dented everyone's confidence in the international trading system for energy. And you hear a lot of talk now about self-reliance, and we have to not be reliant on imports from anywhere. We need to produce our own energy, and whether that's maybe through renewables, maybe through nuclear, perhaps through coal. I know there's a big increase in coal capacity going on in China right now, for instance. And so those two factors seem to be kind of pulling against each other, and it's not really clear to me how they're going to play out and how that balance is going to work out over time. What's your expectation?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, we got to be honest. You step back and you look over the last 5 years, the world has seen 2 big geopolitical shocks that have, caused chaos in the energy markets. The Russia-Ukraine situation was one, and this current situation with Iran, which basically is closing off 20% of the world's oil and 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas exports. It's caused prices to swing. One thing I think that is really important that we're advocating for here, we think natural gas is going to play a leading role in providing affordable, reliable energy to the world. We have the potential in this country to create a natural gas surplus of over 60 BCF a day. And to put that in perspective, that amount of energy is equivalent to adding 10 million barrels a day of clean energy to the world stage. It's going to be a decarbonizing force. That is like adding another Saudi Arabia worth of energy to the world stage. We can do that for a price of $4 in the United States for natural gas, which historically over the last 20 years, natural gas has averaged around $4.50. So $4 natural gas for Americans is the energy equivalent of less than 50 cents per gallon of gasoline. So it's a super affordable price.
Hey, Toby, just to stop you there for 1 second, because, most of the listeners probably can't do the BTU in their calculation. You're sort of raising a big number. What is current U.S. LNG exports comparatively?
Yeah, so for perspective, the U.S. natural gas market, we produce about 110 BCF a day of natural gas. About 20 BCF a day of that is currently being exported. And what I'm saying is that we have the ability to create a 60 BCF a day surplus. So these numbers are large. This is a tremendous amount of energy, but readers and your listeners need to understand we have a tremendous amount of potential in this country when it comes to natural gas. And they need to understand, is this going to be, if we do this, is this going to impact the price of energy for Americans? Like I said, with a $4 natural gas price here in the States, which is equivalent to a 50 cent per gallon of gasoline equivalent, we can create that signal to upstream operators like EQT to get that energy out of the ground. And we can put that energy on the doorstep of the world for a price of less than $10 per million BTU. Now, for perspective, is $10 affordable? $10 natural gas is the energy equivalent of $60 oil per barrel of oil. And believe me, you can build some pretty kick-ass economies with a reliable, steady stream of $60 per barrel energy. So this is the opportunity that we have for the world. But people will say, well, what about the price shocks that are taking place because we're seeing the impacts? Well, our answer to this is our energy systems need to be bigger. And we're already seeing the benefits of a bigger LNG ecosystem. One thing that is really important to mention about LNG is, when it comes to a energy security, not being dependent on one specific country, like Europe buying piped gas from Russia. When you have a pipeline, you only have one person that can put that gas into that pipeline. It was Russia. So you really don't have other options. With LNG, this is a pipeline to the world. Okay. When this natural gas on these ships, you can source this from different parties around the world, and you can deliver this to different parts around the world. And one of the things that we've seen, the benefits of this ecosystem getting bigger. So right now, for your readers, the LNG ecosystem, when the Russia-Ukraine situation happened, was about 50 BCF a day of natural gas. And the U.S. was exporting around 10 BCF a day of natural gas. And what happened when we saw that conflict, we saw natural gas prices in Europe, rise to over, from a normal $10 price level to over $80. And it averaged over $40 per unit of gas. Fast forward to where we're at today, we've seen, and just for perspective, the amount of energy that was pulled out of the ecosystem by shutting off Russian gas was about 10 BCF a day was what was pulled out, and that caused that price to spike. Here we are today in the Iran situation, and with that Gulf being shut down, about 10 BCF a day of natural gas is being prevented to hit the market. But the difference is the price action that we've seen. Prices have gone from, call it $10 to 20, not 40, not 80. They've gone to 20, and they'll come back down. The difference is our LNG ecosystem is bigger. So instead of 50 BCF a day, it's now 60 BCF a day. And the actors that are feeding this, the United States, we've increased our influence. And today, we're exporting 20 BCF a day. So we're a much bigger player in the LNG ecosystem. So think about this, our vision is to let's get our LNG exports around the world to 100 BCF a day. And guess what? With 100 BCF a day ecosystem, we're going to be able to withstand any geopolitical impact that the world can throw at you. Whether it's the Russia-Ukraine 10 BCF a day or what's happening in Iran, it's hard to picture a bigger disruption in energy than what we're seeing in the Middle East. But 10 BCF a day is something that can be that we can deal with in a bigger energy ecosystem. So this is a time to understand the issues, but also understand the solutions is to lean in. And we're already seeing the benefits of a bigger energy ecosystem as this is playing out, and we're just getting started with that.
So, Toby, it's really interesting what you're saying. And of course, I think it's understood in the markets around the world that the U.S. Gas, and that goes even beyond LNG. China was buying ethane to replace naphtha that was lost in the Gulf. We've got Indian companies coming to the United States looking for LPG to replace LPG that was lost to the Gulf. So, the United States' pivotal role in this moment of emergency is, I think, pretty clear to everyone. But sometimes when I'm talking to governments, they just don't want to be dependent on any imports. And so, has LNG taken a hit? I've got people talking about moving to greener energy because it's domestic. So you've got the, miracle story of Pakistan, where a lot of rooftop went into Pakistan in the last 2 years. Is sort of this astronomical jump in the amount of solar there. What are you thinking as sort of an LNG player and as a natural gas producer? Are you worried about people wanting only to have domestic resource?
Yeah, Amy, I'd say my attitude towards the energy systems that we're building, my attitude is we need all of it. If we want to achieve energy abundance for this world, if we want to provide energy security to our allies, if we want to win the AI race, if we want to protect the energy advantage for our citizens, make the planet cleaner, we're going to need to triple the amount of energy that's produced and consumed in this world. And I think that having a balanced approach towards energy is going to be critical. Putting all of your eggs in one basket, like we're only going to focus on green solutions or we're only going to focus on natural gas. You need to have a diversified portfolio. One thing I hope that the world has learned is that this sum of the above approach towards energy, only solar, only wind, only natural gas, only coal, only oil, that's not going that hasn't worked. And so we need to evolve to an all of the above approach to energy, where all forms of energy are needed to contribute. But if we want to achieve our energy abundance ambitions quickly and efficiently, all of the above is not going to cut it. We need to evolve our approach to a best of the above approach. And that means we're deploying the best energy solutions to the world stage. And the best energy, the grading criteria is I think everybody agrees on this. Energy needs to be affordable, it needs to be reliable, and it needs to be clean. And we think that for energy abundance, solutions also need to show that they can scale, and they also need to be fueled by innovation and show that they can get better over time. When we look at energy and we look at natural gas through that lens of grading criteria, we think it is going to play a leading role in our energy future, and it will be a big part of the mix. And we have big solutions that we can offer for the world. But I think when it comes to energy security, I think one thing that's really important for people to understand is energy can be abundant. Just think about where we were in the United States, where 20 years ago we were energy dependent, and a lot of people said we don't have any solutions. Well, what happened is we cracked the code on shale and we transformed America from being energy dependent to an energy powerhouse on the world stage. We created that. And, what we've done in the U.S. with shale, it's foolish to think that this is only going to happen in the United States. When you look at a map of shale is everywhere. And I'll just give you a story about this. One thing I would tell you, you're not going to crack the code on shale. If you ban hydraulic fracturing, if you ban pipelines, you're not going to have any shot. But this is starting to happen in other parts around the world. 5 years ago, I had a conversation with a leader from a Chinese energy business, and he was telling me the struggles that he was having as he was trying to crack the code on his unconventional resources. And after hearing him speak for what was hundreds of millions of dollars invested with little to show for it, I asked him, I said, hey, do you ever think about throwing in the towel? And he looked at me and he said, we are never going to give up. And to me, that is the attitude of abundance. And when you look forward to where they're at today, now China, who was considered resource poor, is now producing more natural gas than resource rich Canada.
That's incredible that they cracked the shale.
Yeah, which has been a poster child. Canada has been a poster child of energy scarcity. And with an attitude of abundance, we can create energy security. And I think everything that we've developed here in America, these are solutions that we can bring to other parts of the world. Now, let's make sure we realize full potential of our resources here in the U.S. before we start thinking about going to other places. A lot of these issues are self-inflicted from an energy security perspective.
So in all of the above, just to sort of level set with the listeners, you and your brothers, or maybe it was just your brothers, invested in renewable natural gas. Which is, kind of something in other countries, might have a lot of potential if you're talking about domestic, because you're talking about basically turning waste, whether that's landfill waste or whether it's some other kind of waste, into energy. And that's been sort of price challenged, and biofuels have been sort of price challenged. But now with the disruption in the Gulf, I have one a friend who's a owner of a container ship company. And early into the crisis, I didn't believe that the Strait was going to open right away. And I advised her to go out and get some marine, biofuel, supplement marine fuel to replace bunkers. And she said she's done very well doing that. So, and now with AI, maybe we could have a better solution for sustainable aviation fuel. Like, when you look out over the landscape, do you still feel like all these things are marginal, or you feel like countries are going to double down now because they want something that they control inside their border?
Yeah, I think a couple things. People need to understand, I don't have an infatuation with natural gas. I have an infatuation with energy. And we're going to produce the energy that's the cheapest, most reliable, cleanest. It is an example that, the brothers, we got into the renewable natural gas business, and we created, alongside the management team, one of the largest renewable natural gas businesses in this country. And we sold it to BP, whose company was called Archaea.
Which they're selling it, by the way, this week. They're now selling it again. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So this was an amazing thing. When we talk to, utilities, and they say, like, what's your energy plans? They say, well, we're going to do renewable natural gas. We're going to lean in on that. Well, what you need to understand is the scalability of these solutions. Amy, if we captured every molecule of methane from every landfill in the country, that would allow us to produce a BCF a day of renewable natural gas, okay? Compared to the 110 BCF a day natural gas market, it's a drop in the bucket. It's helpful, but when we think about the scalability of these solutions, they're just small. Now, one of these things that's really important for people to understand, though, is our energy systems that we're building today are going to set the table and provide the infrastructure for these energy solutions of the future. The pipelines we're building today, they're going to be able to move other, like, renewable natural gas in the future if that becomes, if they can crack the code. But I think the world, when you look at the crippling energy prices that we're seeing around the world, I mean, in the U.S., electricity prices are up almost 15%. In Europe and Germany, they're up over 100%, compared to China, where electricity prices are down, over 30% over the last 15 years. The world, I think, has a bigger appetite for more affordable energy, and that's where we need to start. And the scalability of those is what's gonna happen. But people need to understand the energy solution. I think the energy transition solutions, they're going to come from the companies that have gone through energy transitions. And American Energy, we've gone through one of the biggest energy transitions, going from conventional to shale. And so, we have some other really amazing tools that we're focusing on here. Carbon capture could be another, game-changing technology. I mean, we say carbon capture could be as impactful as hydraulic fracturing. Now, that is a very bold statement, because hydraulic fracturing changed the world and made America the energy superpower. We are currently producing over 30 million barrels a day worth of energy. When you add up everything together and put on an equivalent, that's more than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined. So to say something like carbon capture could be as impactful as hydraulic fracturing is very bold. But when you look at, when we produce these wells, we're only getting maybe 15 to 25% of the energy out of the oil out of these reservoirs. That's thanks to hydraulic fracturing. But putting CO2 into these reservoirs, we call that tertiary recovery. we can get another, call it 15 to 20% of the energy out of the ground. Well, guess what? You get another 15 to 20%. That's pretty similar to what you started with hydraulic fracturing. It could be as impactful. The challenge with carbon capture, the chicken and the egg situation, really is where can you actually get the CO2? And so getting those pure streams of CO2, if you can give that to this industry, the industry will find ways to put it underground and increase the energy production, but also, be decarbonizing the same form. Those are just examples of solutions that this industry is working on. And when they are commercial and they are going to be a more cost-effective, reliable, cleaner form of energy, this industry is going to be the ones that bring that to the market. But I think pushing and trying to force energy solutions that maybe are not profitable or truly sustainable today, I think is one of the reasons why the world is being faced with higher energy bills. And we just need to step back, take a more practical approach. We hear you loud and clear. People want cleaner energy solutions. We think it's a big prize. We think that's one of the biggest races, is to be the first energy solution that is affordable, reliable, and zero carbon. That would be winner take all. So we are in that race with carbon capture, but we're going to take a real practical approach towards this and realize, what we need to do today to meet the energy needs of the world, which is pretty massive.
That is very interesting. How far away is actual commercial deployment of carbon capture for you in that way? I mean, you were talking about the problems in terms of securing streams of pure enough CO2 to make that viable for you. Is that still going to be somewhere in the future, or is that a near-term prospect?
Yeah, I put that in the 5 to 10 years out. One of the opportunities we see is, one of the biggest drivers for power generation is the hyperscalers, and they certainly have maintained their ambitions to procure the cleanest energy possible, and that's why I think to meet their needs, and I think that's why you're seeing natural gas playing a leading role in the power generation build out in this country. But there's your customer. If they are willing to pay for the cost of carbon capture, that could be something that allows us to bolt that on to the build out that's taking place in this country. That could be that 5 to 10 years. Industry is ready to receive this CO2. I mean, there's some things we need to do, but compared to the innovation that needed to take place to unlock shale reservoirs, like being able to stick CO2 underground is not going to be as big of an issue. But there's when you think about what's happening in the U.S. every day, we talk about the oil production, or you talk about the gas production, for that, call it 13 million barrels a day of oil production. What people don't understand is that there's typically 4 to 5 barrels of water being produced alongside every one of those barrels of hydrocarbons. What that means, Ed, is that every day in the U.S., we are pulling over 40 million barrels of liquid out of a reservoir, and that's creating space for 40 million barrels of something else to be put in there, like CO2. So we have, for enhanced oil recovery or enhanced gas recovery, if we can solidify sort of what the prize is there when you put CO2 on the ground, how much more energy do you get out? If we can solidify that prize and also get the incentives for people to actually make the CO2 with carbon capture technology bolted onto these power plants, those are the two things that could come together and actually create a more sustainable, cleaner energy system, but still respecting the affordable and reliable aspects of energy.
Yeah, because that whole process is still really pretty expensive, isn't it? And certainly, I'm sure, would require some kind of government support to make it viable.
That's right. I think we need to, when we think about CO2, we need to think about this as for a cost of probably less than $100 per ton is sort of the mark that people are trying to figure out. And Ed, just so you know, where like the cost challenge here, because you got to make the CO2, you got to transport it, you got to stick it underground. Sticking it underground is actually going to be very cost effective. We're not worried about the cost there. You're talking about less than $20 a ton to do that. Piping, transporting the CO2, we know what those costs are. It's really, the biggest part is really on the capture of the CO2. You look at DAC and anywhere from, $1,000 a ton, and also some of these carbon capture bolt-ons to natural gas plants. Those, if we can get the capture part solved like that, then I think it would unlock the other parts of the value chain.
Yeah, no, and as I understand it, still the sort of the basic technology for carbon capture using amines, that hasn't progressed a massive amount. I mean, it's been refined and developed. One fun fact about me is that my father worked on carbon capture technology back in the 1970s. And when he looked at what they're doing today, he says, this is still basically the same thing. It's not massively different now from what we were working on back then. So, as you say, if something could be done to achieve a breakthrough in capture in particular that could bring costs down dramatically, that would make a huge difference. But it's tough, and there are a lot of challenges there, certainly.
And Ed, last point I'd make on this, I also think we need to, have the right mentality on this, because in the carbon capture space, the focus should be for people that want to see cleaner energy, the focus should be, let's put this CO2 on the ground and make sure it stays there. When we think about carbon capture, there's the deep permanent injection, which people, would love to see that happen. But some people say, well, if you're doing CO2 to get more oil or gas out of the ground, I don't want that. Well, let's remember what our goal is here is to get the CO2 on the ground. So we need to have an attitude that allows us to focus on that and not shirk away or discredit CO2 injection that is going to facilitate more hydrocarbons to be produced.
I mean, the thing about the injection, of course, is that it makes it much easier to make it commercial. So there's an advantage there. But it also requires a closed loop system, and Toby, EQT would be in a good position to move in that direction, because I have to be able to recapture the CO2 after I inject it and have it not just come back out into the atmosphere. So it's really, I think, well suited to some of the things you've done in your history, because you have a multiple layer of technical challenge.
So I want to go back, Toby, to your points about a significant increase, very substantial increase you're talking about in US natural gas production and the benefits that could bring to the world. Just want to, again, run through some of the numbers quickly just to help people understand the scale of what you're talking about. As you were saying, the US natural gas market today, about 110 billion cubic feet a day. It's rising very significantly right now because of two factors. One is the wave of new construction of LNG export plants going on the Gulf Coast in particular. That's going to increase exports of gas, demand for gas very significantly. And then also we have, of course, the AI boom, as we've been talking about, all the new data centers being built and the power generation that they're going to need. And a good proportion of that is going to be natural gas. And that's also going to increase the size of the gas market. You put those two factors together, LNG and AI, their estimates, I think our number is that it could be as much as a 40% increase in demand for natural gas in the United States over the next 10 years or so. So you've already got this big increase coming. What you seem to be talking about then is a big increase on top of that. And I think, do you use the number of maybe an increase of adding another 100 BCF a day to US production? So give or take, kind of get doubling the size of the market and sending that for export. And the question that we have, certainly, well, Mackenzie, the question a lot of people have then is, what would be the consequences for prices if you did that? And as you say, we've been in this fantastically beneficial environment in the United States as a result of the shale revolution of having long-term, very low and stable gas prices for getting on for 20 years now. And that's a tremendous benefit to American consumers. It's a benefit to American industry. It's something which has really helped the United States relative to other economies around the world. And the question is it going to stay that way? And so if demand increases rapidly, as it's already doing, but then if it increased it even more, as you're suggesting is possible, isn't that just going to start driving prices up and potentially putting at risk this whole kind of benign environment of low prices that American consumers have been enjoying for so long?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that we definitely need to address, and we're excited to answer that question. So as you mentioned, just the size of the demand that we see, these are things that are already in motion. The power generation build out could be between 10 and 20 BCF a day. The LNG build out, just from what the market forces have already set up, we see another 10 BCF a day increase. We think the conflict in the Middle East is going to cause people to diversify away from the Middle East, come to the States. And so with that, you could see a pathway so today we're at 20 BCF a day going to 30. I think with the diversification, I think you can see a pathway from 30 to 40 BCF a day. So as you mentioned, you could see a 20 to 40% increase in natural gas demand here in the States with those two factors. As I mentioned, the surplus that we can create, we have with a $4 price, domestic price of natural gas, that's the price signal to get it out of the ground. We believe we can create a 60 BCF a day natural gas surplus. People need to understand the amount of inventory we have in the United States is completely correlated to the price that we're going to get for the product. Said another way, at $5 natural gas, the amount of surplus we can create is even greater. So the surplus, that we have the ability to meet that. And, $5 natural gas is the energy equivalent of $30 oil. Okay, so this is still super affordable energy. And then to your point on the impact, this has been an argument that some people have had concerns, rightly so. If we export, is this going to have an impact to domestic prices? Well, we've got a great track record of empirical data you can look at. We exported relatively little LNG back in 2016. And then over the past 10 years, we're now the world's largest LNG exporter. What have natural gas prices done from 2016 to today? They've been some of the lowest natural gas prices that we've experienced in history. What does that tell you? That tells you that we have the resource to be able to meet the demand. And I would also make the argument that LNG is actually, and our ability to export is actually going to increase the energy security that we have here in the United States, because exports mean surplus and surplus means energy security. Now, we saw this actually play out this winter. Winter Storm Fern that took place, in that early February timeframe. Domestic prices rose because of this extreme weather. Prices got up to over $7 Henry Hub price in the United States. And what we saw happen was about 5 BCF a day of our LNG exports turned down, and we were able to use that gas to help support and depress prices here in the United States. It's an example of our surplus actually being a buffer to provide energy security to Americans. And also another point I think that is worth looking at right now, we see international prices through the roof, north of almost $20 per million BTU. In the States, they're less than $3. With this crisis that's taking place, while prices have gone up 50% internationally in the United States, they've gone down 10%. So clearly there's a disconnect between, the international price signals and what's happening in the United States. And as long as we have the ability to let these markets function and make sure that the gas can get to the source of demand, and we have the pipeline infrastructure to do that, we're going to be able to make sure that the low-cost energy is able to do its job, keep energy affordable for Americans while also providing energy security to our allies.
Hey, Toby, want to ask you a question, just a CEO type question, because we have a lot of listeners from Houston and other parts of the oil and gas industry too. So, one of the big things you keep mentioning, sort of $4 as being this magic number for the industry. But one of the things we know is that for companies like EQT, even where you have great management, stock price goes up and down with the fate of energy prices, and no more than in the natural gas upstream, drilling industry, companies that do only upstream. So in the last couple of years, EQT is kind of diversified your business in the sense that you've kind of moved downstream into midstream parts of the business with pipeline and other kind of assets. And, the interesting thing is, it's sort of like a different strategy to kind of go back to vertical integration. It meant that not only can you sign these LNG contracts, but you can also work with utilities because you have the corridor to bring them the gas and you can control that. So can you tell us just a little bit about inside the world of a oil and gas CEO and how you think about those decisions?
That's a great question. I'm really interested to hear your answer to that. And I just wanted to add one more if I can, which is, also in that context, when you look at this expectation of growth in demand for gas, the growth that's pretty well already baked in and the additional growth potential on top of that you see, how does that affect your decision making? And you've been very focused on the Appalachian Basin, so Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia is where you are producing now. Do you see a case for moving further afield beyond that to other parts of the country, maybe to other parts of the world? So again, when you're making those kind of strategic decisions that Amy's talking about, how do you see the future of the company?
So, for shareholders, what is the value proposition that we're offering? How do we prepare the organization for this growth? The value, and I can cover that. So the value proposition, what we're offering investors, we want to give investors the best risk-adjusted exposure to natural gas. That's it. And so the risk-adjusted part really comes down from us having a low cost structure in a cyclical business. A low cost structure is going to allow you to weather the storm and maintain upside exposure to the upside when prices do turn the other way. So for us at EQT, we've been laser focused on lowering our cost structure. Currently, right now, EQT, we have lowered our costs by over 30% since taking over. And right now, EQT has a cost structure where we can generate profitability with a $2 natural gas price. For perspective, we believe the marginal natural gas producer in the United States requires a $3.50 natural gas price. So that buffer that's our cushion and is really what protects us on the downside. Now, also what that allows us to do is because we're able to maintain our profitability when prices are low, that allows us to mitigate the need for hedging. And now without hedging, we now have exposure to the upside. And this was the key to making a lot of this happen was that vertical integration you mentioned, Amy. By integrating our pipelines, we were able to pull probably about 45, 50 cents in our cost structure and lower it from $2.50 to that $2 today. And we said we don't need to hedge, and we actually entered 2026 with very little hedges in place. So when extreme weather event happened, we were able to make sure we were able to take advantage of those higher prices while still doing everything we can to produce as much energy as possible during that period of time. It actually produced a really, one of the greatest quarters in the company's history was because of that, maintaining that exposure to the upside. So that's our value preparation. That's our value proposition. How do we prepare this company for this tremendous growth that we see? And this really is just a continuation of what we've been doing since we came in here, telling shareholders we want to realize the full potential of EQT. That means we want to make the highest quality company possible. That all starts with our culture. So we've built a quality culture. Our employees are engaged. They're values driven. They're going insight to action faster than peers. We respect the men and women that are out there in the field. So we've got a great culture, great leaders. The next thing is having a quality cost structure. And that's, I mentioned, having a $2 cost structure is something that we're going to continue to focus, looking for ways to drive that lower. Having a quality asset base. We have over 2 million acres that we've assembled. When we started here, it was about 1 million acres. We've added another 1 million acres. That's what gives us the opportunity to drill and continue this great work for decades to come. And then the last thing we're on the final step here is having a quality balance sheet. So we're hitting our leverage targets, and that is going to be, we're going to hit those targets by the end of this year. And that's going to give us the freedom to bring the last piece of the puzzle for EQT, which is bringing quality growth to EQT. And the quality part really is, we define it as being sustainable growth. Sustainable growth starts by capturing the demand and then backfilling that demand with production. In the past, I think operators would look and say, oh my goodness, there's a huge amount of demand coming. Let's go out there and start drilling. And you get ahead of yourself and the demand maybe takes longer to show up. The pipeline gets delayed. The power plant gets delayed. And you oversupply the market, prices crash, and it's not a great place to be. So for us to capture this, for us to grow, we're looking to capture the actual demand directly. And this is some of the work that we've done by doing gas supply deals with power generation facilities. This last quarter, we announced a very large partnership with CPV Shea Energy Center in West Virginia. It's going to be a 2 gigawatt site. It's going to require about 300 million cubic feet of natural gas. It's about 4% of our company's production. It's easy for us to allocate those volumes to that facility, but that will also provide a pathway for us to grow. For our story, this growth for the next few years is really going to be focused on making sure domestic needs are covered. We're able to provide affordable energy to lower energy bills, but also support this power generation build-out that's taking place. But then when you look further out, really in 2030, the international natural gas story becomes even larger. While we see demand in the U.S. growing maybe call it 20 to 40 BCF a day, internationally, we see natural gas demand growing 200 BCF a day. And for perspective, global natural gas ecosystem is about 450 BCF a day. So this is a big move, and we want to have exposure to those markets. So in the root of all this, Amy, our strategy is very simple. I can boil it down to this one sentence: access premium markets, be the low-cost energy provider to those markets. It's that simple. So international markets, we do consider those to be premium, and we want to be the low-cost energy provider. And having our base of Appalachian operations is what's going to allow us to put gas on the doorstep of the world for a price of less than $10. We think that hunts, and that also is going to create other opportunities around the world for us.
That is very interesting. Something else you mentioned at the beginning of the show was your work with your nonprofit that you founded, Energy Core. Tell us a little bit more about that, and what is that going to be doing?
Really, our focus with Energy Core is to bring energy abundance to emerging markets. And so, we are looking to, the driving force behind that one is understanding the correlation between energy access and wealth. If we can get people access to energy, we can make them wealthy. We can improve the quality of life for billions. And what we're doing at Energy Core is we're identifying energy projects. We're providing access to energy, but also making sure that that energy can translate to wealth. So we also are focusing on how is that energy demand? What is the demand for that energy?
And sorry, and when you say sort of supporting energy project, what kinds of things are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, across the board, taking an all the above approach, we are looking for ways to deploy renewables, deploy natural gas, deploy propane for clean cooking. One of the things that's, we're really leading with purpose on the profits and purpose equation. Energy Core gives us the ability to lead with purpose, but we are still focused on deploying truly sustainable energy solutions. So the profitability of these energy solutions that are being put out, even though this is a nonprofit, is something that's incredibly important to us. I'll just give you an example. We just got done partnering with an organization called Innovation Africa, and we did a solar powered water project. And for $100,000, Ed, we were able to drill a water well, build a water tower, and have a solar powered pump that water up to the tower. And that's providing clean water for over 3,000 people in this village. You step back and you realize, like, women in this village were waking up at 3 a.m. to go get clean water for their kids before school. All that's done now. They don't need to do it. Now they can actually focus on teaching and growing and maybe getting a job, earning, and they're on their path with something as simple as providing, access to clean water, which is only available if you have access to energy. When you look at the impact we can make, that's a $100,000 project, benefits 3,000 people for $3 a person. These are some of if you want to make an impact with Energy Core is giving us the opportunity to do that. This is one of the reasons why we started this, was to make an impact. So this is not a think tank. This is actually finding the projects, partnering with them, and actually getting things built. We believe that, the energy industry is going to play a leading role in providing energy access to the billions out there. We're kickstarting that with Energy Core. What's really been awesome is this has really become the nonprofit for our industry. We've raised over $20 million. And so we are taking applications from organizations around the world.
Hey, Toby, you're a profitable industry. I'm not criticizing EQT because you're a leader, but for the other companies that are listening, that is low potatoes for an industry that makes so much money. I want to see all of you calling Toby and offering him more donations for this NGO. That's
right. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate the shout out for the fundraising. Yes, we are still taking a lot of fundraising. One of the things that we've seen in this space, there are a lot of organizations that are working to address this problem. Why? Because this is one of the biggest, highest impact opportunities you can have. I think what we're doing with Energy Corps is really partnering with these organizations and providing them the resources and energy expertise so that their projects can be truly sustainable and then work to scale them. At Energy Corps, we're not focused on providing first light. So we're not putting light bulbs in huts. Really, what we're really going to focus on is bringing modern energy at scale. And so we think that's the niche that is really going to allow us to leverage our energy expertise and work with the governments to make sure that they have the right policies in place to achieve the wealth from the energy. We've got fantastic leadership with Tisha Schuller. She's the head of our Energy Corps. I don't know if you guys know her, but she's a thought leader in the energy space. And she's, just like me, has dedicated her life to bring energy abundance into this world. So it's a fantastic platform, tons of momentum. And please check it out, energycorps.com, CORPS, like the Peace Corps, but for energy. And we're really excited about launching that this last year. And we're really excited about the future there.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear about that. I mean, to be fair, Amy, there are other energy companies that also do great work in terms of philanthropic activity, social responsibility. But yeah, that is a great call to action.
Everybody talks about this and then they don't do that. They do some other things. So I'm just saying, if you're going to go around saying that this is your, thing you can solve, then definitely be putting assets right on this particular topic. That is what I'm saying.
And Amy, I will say, just to give people some grace here. I mean, this has been really kickstarting the fundraising. We've only been out here for a few months, really soliciting donations. Ultimately, what we're creating with Energy Corps, because it's an all the above approach, I really want to give agency to the energy businesses so that they can, depending on the geographies or the energy solutions that they provide in their base business, they can build a portfolio of energy access projects that aligns with their business. Like for us at EQT, one of our biggest focuses is going to be on clean cooking fuels, leveraging propane to eliminate indoor air pollution, mitigate the 3 million lives that are lost, women and children, prematurely from breathing indoor air pollution, which is completely unacceptable. But, we're building up these partnerships with all of these nonprofits around the world that are actually deploying these projects. And then, the vision is that companies can come and say, I care about this geography, this type of energy problem or solution, and they can build a basket of their projects, and then they can sponsor that area. And, the goal for us is to take these communities and regions and bring them up the energy access scale, but also making sure that that's translating to wealth. So one of the really exciting, I think getting people access to energy, we know how to do that. The biggest challenge is making sure that energy translates to wealth. And this is where I think this could not be starting at a better time, because with artificial intelligence, if we can get people access to electricity, we can kickstart the education, kickstart the economies. And this is really a unique period of time where we can really, complete the full cycle and really lift these people up. And eventually, Amy, the work that we're doing in the emerging markets, hopefully those emerging markets become just markets. And then there can be, ecosystems that our bigger businesses can help fuel, and just part of our normal job, which is providing access to affordable, reliable energy to markets. Yeah,
that is a fantastic call to action. As you say, that issue of clean cooking fuels in particular is really important one, and it'd be great to see what progress can be made on that. So, yeah, I would echo that thought. People should definitely check it out. You're saying Peace Corps, CORPS, is you can Google. Sorry, I said it wrong. Energy Corps, like Peace Corps, CORPS. I would definitely encourage people to check that out as well. And it'd be really interesting to talk to you again, perhaps in a few years, to see how things have gone and to see what progress you've been able to make with that and how economies and lives have been changed by it. For now, though, we are unfortunately going to have to leave it there until we got space for. But it's been great talking to you, Toby. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amy. Great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see you, Toby.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed to our producer, Molly Merwin. And above all, as ever, many thanks to all of you for listening. We really value your feedback, so please do keep that coming. Leave us a comment, leave a review, get in touch on social media. And we'll be back very soon with all the latest news and views on the future of energy. Until then, goodbye.